And I wanted to thank, first of all of you for coming today and choosing UT. We're so delighted that you're here and chosen to be part of our graduate programs. And I know that you've been getting lots of good information throughout the morning, and I know you're going to get even more, and potentially more day-to-day information on how you operate in this next panel. You've had sessions about campus resources, time management, career development, and as we touched on briefly this morning, one of the things that happens as a graduate student, and you certainly heard about this from Dr. Edwards, is that there are so many demands on your time. Formal coursework, getting into your literature and your discipline, planning and conducting your own research, analyzing your own information and synthesizing it and creating your own new ideas, attending group and research meetings, and then that ever important balance of professional and private life. And so the panel today, a very erudite group has joined us, and these are all faculty that are dedicated to graduate students and the university and have lots of good ideas. And I think I'm going to ask our first speaker to be Dr. Anthony Quinn. Dr. Quinn is an associate professor in the Department of Biological Sciences and the College of Natural Sciences and Math, and he has served as the chair of Biosciences Graduate Affairs Committee and currently serves as the chair of the Curriculum Committee in that college. He's also served COGS, the College of Graduate Studies, on our Diversity Committee and is actively involved in diversity efforts across the campus. He studies autoimmune diseases and has mentored lots of undergraduate and graduate students since he came to UT in 2001. So I've asked each of the speakers to think about a certain question that they're going to try to answer for you. So I'm going to ask each of them to share their question with you and then provide the answer. Does that sound okay? And there are microphones in front of you. And so each of the speakers will have, 5-6 minutes to speak, and then we can have some interactive sessions with you in the audience. Then we'll ask the next speaker to take their question and share that with you. We tried to pick questions that we thought would be really relevant globally.
All right, thank you, Patsy. First of all, I'd like to say welcome to the University of Toledo. You've heard probably several welcomes today, and you'll hear some more throughout the rest of the day, but we truly mean that. We're always excited about undergrad students, but they're not here, are they? But we're more excited about graduate students. And so I'm excited to see so many of you here this morning. So my question that was put forth to me is, what is the number one challenge facing new graduate students? And I thought about this long and hard, and I've done this a couple years, and I think I've given a different answer each time. But I think the number one challenge that you're going to face in a broad sense is adaptation, is learning to adapt to actually what it means to be a graduate student. And it's in an unofficial term, in an unofficial way, what I can explain it to you is you're about to join a club. And there are people who want you to prove that you belong in this club, that it's a special club, and you have to have certain skill sets, a certain mindset, certain way of thinking, not necessarily a certain philosophy, but a certain approach to life and solving problems. And so their idea is, are you qualified to be in this club? That's a loose way of thinking about it. The way we exercise this qualification is in exams and classes and dissertations and defenses of your thesis and such. But really, in a layman's terms, that's the issue. Are you ready to be a member of this club? And so learning to adapt is going to be the big challenge, because in each discipline, the expectations are going to be a little different. The challenges are going to be a little different. And so you're going to have to learn to adapt to that term expectations, and somebody's going to talk about that a little bit later, the differences in expectations in the classrooms. But one of the things I hear students talk about, graduate students, especially first or second year graduate students, is again learning to adapt to those expectations. They don't talk about adapting. What they do is they complain that this is happening or that's happening. And it's all about the adaptation. By the third year, if they're PhD students, you don't hear them talk about those things anymore. They've gotten accustomed to them. They've adapted to them. And they don't like to hear the whining from the first year students because they say, oh, just get over it, right? This is what grad school is all about. In adapting, you'll have to learn to multitask. I know many of you probably feel you already are able to multitask and to do it well. But when you think about it, you're going, as Dr. Komanecki mentioned earlier, you're going to be in the classroom. Some of you are going to be TAs. Some of you are going to be RAs. You have meetings. And so you're going to be expected to be not just okay or good or efficient in each of those areas, but you're going to be expected to excel in each of those areas. So you're going to expect it to be really do well in classes, but expected to show up on time, be prepared, ready to defend yourself, defend your opinions at any given moment. And so you're going to expect it to be efficient and proficient at every aspect of what you do. And so you have to learn to adapt to that. That's the expectations from you. And then the pace is actually a little quicker than what you may have experienced as an undergrad. And what I mean by pace, again, it comes out of the expectations that graduate students are supposed to be superior in all these areas compared to undergrad students. And that's why I say we like graduate students, because you can dump things on graduate students, and the expectation is that you're going to produce and produce well, because how many of you are training to be followers? If you raise your hand so we can count them. Right. So everybody in here is training to be the leader of something, either a leader of a small group, large group, a company, a laboratory, a school, but the leader of something. And so you're going to be responsible for setting examples for those who follow behind you, and that's a high expectation to fill. And so people expect you to do that, and unfortunately, they'll give you a grace period probably in the first couple of months. But after that, you'll hear that phrase a lot of times that you're a graduate student. And so you just have to learn to adapt to those high expectations and realize that it's not personal. They're not picking on me. It's just they're demonstrating to you that you have to operate at this level to be part of this club, and at the end, to do that defense of your thesis or dissertation, to be awarded either the master's degree or a doctor of philosophy degree in order to be in the club. Because later, people, when they see those alphabets behind your names, there are going to be expectations for you that you are professional, you're efficient, and you do things in a certain way. Okay? And so it's learning to adapt and adapt pleasantly. If I can pass that on to you, to adapt pleasantly. So even if you don't like it, give that grudging smile, because at the end of your training period, there's 4 or 5, if not 6 people that you have to satisfy in order to pass and move on to the next phase of life. And so if you do it pleasantly, it will pass much quicker, and that experience will be much easier. And I think you'll enjoy it much more.
Thanks, Tony. Words to live by. Patty, did I have you? Okay. Our next panelist is Dr. Patricia Relu, Associate Professor of Bioengineering and Director of Cellular Engineering Lab in the College of Engineering. And for the past 10 years, she's served as the Director of the Bioengineering Graduate Programs, and has also served as Chair of the Department, and has also served as Chair of the Graduate Council. So lots of experience. Dr. Relu.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure again to see all of you here this morning. It's like a refresher for all of us. This is kind of like starting a garden in the fall with all of the new students coming in, and it's really, really exciting to see you all grow as you go through your graduate program. So it's really an exciting and invigorating experience for all of us to see you here today. The question that I have been given to discuss is, could you share some insights about the differences between the expectations of graduate students and undergraduates? And I'm going to pose that from the perspective of what is expected of you as an undergraduate versus what is expected of you now that you're in your graduate program. And I think that Dr. Quinn had some excellent points in terms of adaptation. And adaptation, or being flexible and nimble in your thinking is going to be very, very important in that. When you come into an undergraduate program, typically you're thinking in a time scale of a semester. And you take a class for a semester, and at the end of that semester, you dot all the I's, you cross all the T's, and you take that class and you stick it up on a shelf and you're finished with it. And you may pull pieces of that out that follow on with other things, but that class in and of itself is done. In graduate studies, you will have curriculum that you take, you'll have courses that you take, but the biggest part of graduate studies is a research degree. And it's a research degree in that you are teaching yourself the vast majority of the information that you are going to need and are going to learn. And you're going to be teaching yourself that information by spending time in the library, spending time with literature. You're going to be talking with other people. You're going to be talking with your faculty advisor, and you're going to be talking with other faculty. And you're going to be trying to take a lot of information, gleaning all of that information, and putting it together into a cohesive picture. And in that process, the adaptation and the flexibility come in because you don't really know how you're going to go from point A to point B. You may have a plan where you think, okay, I'm going to go from here to here to here to here, and at that second step you may get completely derailed. And you may have to start over. You may have to take a pivot and do something very different. You may not even end up getting to B. By the time you finish your graduate studies, what you thought your project was going to be or what your dissertation or thesis were going to look like, it may look completely different. And that's part of the adaptation and the flexibility. Because research is something that is unknown, you don't really know where you're going to go. So you may have some ideas of what you want to do when you finish your graduate degree, but where you may end up ultimately may be very different than that. And your time in graduate school may be very similar to that. Okay? So undergraduate, you're thinking in a time scale of semesters. Graduate studies, you have to get yourself into a much longer time scale of thinking. So you have intermediate targets that you will have that are going to be short-term targets, but those are all really building on what is really a very long journey and a long-term goal in your graduate studies. Okay? I think I will leave that so we can continue on with the next question. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Our next panelist is Dr. Rebecca Schneider, Associate Professor of Science Education in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction in the Judith Erb College of Education. She's also the Director of the Secondary Teacher Education Program and the Woodrow Wilson Fellowship Program. She has served on and is currently Vice Chair of Graduate Council. Dr. Schneider.
Thank you. Welcome. The question that I was given is, what is the best piece of advice you received when you were in graduate school? And the advice that I was given, I may not have realized it was the best piece of advice at the time, but now having advised a lot of graduate students, I can look back and say that really made a big difference. And what I'm going to talk about is going to actually tie into what Dr. Railu talked about and what Dr. Quinn talked about, and it's to write. Write, and then write often, write again, revise, edit. And let me unpack that a little bit for you. Dr. Quinn talked about becoming a member of us, being part of folks who do research, who are part of that conversation. So how do I know when you are ready to be one of us? How do we know that? Because you can talk with us. Your ideas have fleshed out to a way that you can think with us. Well, you learn about how you're thinking by writing. The more you write, the more you know what you think. When you begin writing, you aren't really sure what you're thinking, and the rest of that piece of advice of writing is to share what you're writing. Even when it seems like I'm not really sure what I'm talking about yet, that's okay. Share that writing, get some feedback, and be open to rewriting, because the writing is your thinking. That's how you're going to show that you're thinking with us. Being open to revision is connected to what Dr. Railu was saying. As an undergraduate, you might say, I've written the paper, now that paper is done, I'm going to write a different paper. Well, in graduate school, what you do is it feels like you're writing the same paper for years. Because you write, and then you say, oh, I need to think about this, and so you write that piece. And you say, oh, I need to think about this too, and so you write that piece. And you start putting it together. And somewhere along the line, you find out there were some pieces you've written you actually don't need. And for people who are not natural writers who are learning to write, and I will tell you, everybody can learn to write. Everybody can do this. It may not feel as comfortable to say, I'm going to throw away those pages that I wrote because they were hard to write. So set them aside, save them for another day, because you want to revise. Part of revising and developing your ideas is to focus. Part of this work of graduate school is everything sounds interesting when you first come into graduate school. Everything is fascinating. Everything is the thing you want to do. Well, the other thing you want to do is finish. You'd like to have a done dissertation. Well, you're not going to get that done if you have too broad of ideas. So the more you write, the more you narrow in, because as you write more and more, you find out that topic's actually fairly deep. There's a lot there to unpack. Well, once I unpack all of that, I can't actually do that same thing with a lot of other topics. So you narrow and go deeper with your writing, which goes back to keep writing. Share your writing with other graduate students. Read their writing. Part of learning how to write is to read the work of other folks. And you give them some advice and you say, it's really obvious in what they wrote that they needed to think about this or expand over here, or they really didn't need these 3 pages. And then you think, you know what, I think I did the same thing. So now I can go back and look at my writing in a new way. The last piece attached to that, as if you start writing early, that helps you focus on getting the depth you need, that by the time you're getting to a thesis or a dissertation, you have thought through that topic. So the sooner you narrow in, the more likely you are to move more smoothly through. Now, that doesn't mean don't play with some other ideas, but as you start focusing in, you will move through quickly. As you pick those topics, it might be tempting to say, I know how to write this one. I don't like it that much, but I know how to write it. This one over here is really fascinating, but that looks hard. I would advise you to go with the one that looks fascinating. My doctoral advisor said, what do you want to talk about for the next 5 years after you have graduated? Do you want to talk about this for 5 years? No, I don't. Well, then do the one that you really are interested in. So the rest of that advice about writing is figure out what it is you're very interested in, because that is how people are going to come to know you. Because they're not all going to meet you. They're going to, some of them are going to meet you when you go out, go to conferences and such, but others are going to meet you through your writing. And they will come to know who you are by what it is you write about. So think about that.
Thank you. Great words. Very important. And I used to hate to write, but you end up doing lots of it forever, and particularly good about finding a topic you love. Think about yourself 20 years from now. Is this what you see yourself doing in 20 years? It's a good thing to ask from time to time. Last but not least, our final speaker is Dr. Mike Dowd. He's an associate professor in the College of Languages, Literature, and Social Sciences and chair of the Department of Economics. For the past 20 years, he has served almost continuously on the Graduate Council and served as its chair at least twice, and is also an active member and former president of Faculty Senate, so a true faculty leader. So it's my pleasure to have him serve in the cleanup batting position. Dr. Dowd.
Thank you, Dr. Komenecki. The question I was given, I'm going to tease you a little bit. I really like this question because once I get done being department chair, I think I'm going to go back and get a degree in physics. And the reason is I really like big questions. I'm a macroeconomist, but physics has big questions. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is that Dr. Komenecki gave me the question, what is the key to success in graduate school?
No problem for you.
The key.
Yeah.
And
Singular.
I thought about this for a while, and I can't give specifics because whatever discipline you're in is going to differ from the discipline of the person sitting next to you. So I want to address this in a broader sense. And once I started thinking about that, I think a key to success in graduate studies is for the students to maintain perspective. And I'm going to list three perspectives that I hope you would at least consider. And many of these have already been touched on. The first is the perspective on expectations. As Dr. Quinn mentioned, you're expected to be a leader. Now, this is in the classroom, it's in the laboratory, it's in whatever the environment that you're placed in. A leader. As a gross generalization, undergraduate students record information they received from faculty, and they repeat it back to them on exams. Follow the directions of your mentor, but always do more than what is asked of you. Let your professors and your mentor know what you are working on. What is your progress? And don't assume that they know. Now, this is something that's it's an important perspective, so that your success or the roadblocks that you may come across, this isn't just you dealing with them alone. There is this expectation of leadership, but that doesn't mean you're out there alone. Another aspect, which was brought up as well, is professionalism. Your approach to your studies, your colleagues, your work ethic must always be professional. Your scholarly work is your scholarly work, but you will need to work with your mentor, other professors, your colleagues in order to achieve the goals that you're going after. And you can only achieve those goals through with respect to dealing with other people if you're at truly a professional level. Always receive and welcome feedback. Do this with an open mind. But you also have to know when you need to persist with your own inquiries. Welcome feedback, but know where you want to go. Listen to your mentor. And this is something that you have to keep in mind every single day. We all want every single graduate student to be an independent thinker. But even independent thinkers can receive help from others. Just as a crude example, not a crude, but a rough example, I've been involved in graduate studies for a long time, as Dr. Komenecki mentioned, but I'm not an expert in graduate studies. When I need help, I turn to Dr. Komenecki. Now, this is something that professors do all the time. We turn to our colleagues. You can turn to your colleagues. You can turn, of course, to your mentor. You can turn to your other professors. And when you establish a level of professionalism, it becomes natural. It is a natural aspect of the thought progression that you are going to experience from starting today until you finish. And the last perspective I want to talk about, this is the one I really like because I'm a romantic in terms of what a university is. I think university, this is the most wonderful environment in the world.
Agreed.
It is to keep your focus on the end game. The old adage that it's not the destination but the journey that is most important. The end game for graduate students is learning and truly understanding the material that you're dealing with. In other words, your focus, as mentioned earlier, it should be less on grades and much more on learning. When you work, in whatever your area is, that work continues, not until you think that you know a sufficient amount to perform well on an exam. But as a graduate student, you work, and you work until you understand, truly understand. And this is a mindset that I hope every graduate student, captures. The work, you're there, you're in graduate school for many reasons, one of which is it is for yourself. It is to learn. It is not to get an 85 or a 95 on an exam. It is for you to understand the issue that you're dealing with. Be passionate, absolutely passionate about your work. The notion of choosing, forgive me, Becky, what was the term you used? The fascinating topic? That's it. You get a topic that you're fascinated with, that you're passionate about. All that work I mentioned before, it's not work. It's not work. This is something that you're doing for yourself on one side of it. But the other part is, always remember that through your graduate studies, you and every person in this room is going to advance knowledge. This is huge. You know, people talk about school as learning, but you are going to advance knowledge. And a perspective that I hope you carry with you is that this advancement is for the world. It is your accomplishment, but you are advancing knowledge for the world. You will work, your work will be based on work that came before you. And one of the most excellent parts about research is that someone will base their work on your work. There is a progression, and that is one of the most wonderful perspectives I hope you can carry.
Thanks very much. And we have time for some questions from the audience. If you just want to raise your hand, we'd be happy to answer those. Should be at least one, just like Dean Bjorkman said. I'm not leaving here. I can't leave here till there's at least one question. And we didn't plant anybody in the audience, so that something burning aside from parking, aside from student health insurance. Oh, please, yes. Oh, maybe try the other.
Okay. So, are there any questions? I don't want to disrupt anybody's question. Okay. So lunch is after this, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we can be a little lighthearted. So I mentioned that your efforts are to become part of this club. And one way that you'll know that you're headed in the right direction, especially for those of you who will become TAs or work with undergraduate students. And so the way you recognize that you're headed in the right direction, you'll find yourself one day walking into your office or your work area. You're going to slam down folders, books, or whatever in your hands, and you'll turn to someone who's standing there and you'll say, "These undergraduate students are so lazy," right? They want you to give them everything. They don't want to do anything. Oh my God, how do kids get to be so lazy? So you start to use that word.
Secrets, you know.
Yes, you'll start to use that word kids. Even though you're 24, 25, you're going to start referring to undergraduate students as kids. And so that means that your mindset and your way of thinking is starting to change, and you're starting to think more like professors and less like undergraduate students. And so you know that you're moving in the right direction. The tip is most of you, if not all of you, took the GRE. And if you recall, when they describe the questions, they say some of the questions, there's more than one right answer, but your challenge is to pick the best right answer. And I would describe the difference between undergrad and graduate school is, as a graduate student, you're supposed to be able to recognize the best answer, not just the correct answer. And so none of your tests will have multiple choice, true and false questions on them anymore. But you're going to be asked to distinguish subtleties between 2 points or 2 points of view or 2 facts. It's being able to mature to a more defined way of thinking and reasoning. And then undergraduate students will start to annoy you, and that's why you think they're so lazy.
And wonderful, and we're happy they're here.
Yeah, and don't tell them I said that.
Well, will you all help me thank our panel for some of their wonderful insights?